Hey folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. Well, as you can see, the sun has finally come out. Uh, and it's a little dry. I mean, it's humid, but it's drying up the ground. Uh, Something we haven't seen a lot lately around here, but we're supposed to get some more rain and even thunderstorms this afternoon and this evening, so can't let that mud dehydrate too much around here. Got to keep it wet. All right. Today I wanted to talk about something that some friends of mine and I were talking about yesterday. And we were talking about, food, producing food after the big balloon goes up, whatever that may be, whether it's, a short-term, long-term, permanent, regional, apocalyptic, whatever scenario you want to think of. And having and producing food. And I was talking to them about, harvesting wild food, foraging, hunting, fishing, things like that, of going out into the woods, into the wild, and gathering food that grows naturally. And I have talked to people in the past that are into that. And there are, some people that have the idea that they'll be able to go out here in the woods like what you see behind me or wherever they live, and with the knowledge that they have, be able to survive for, a very lengthy period of time, if not indefinitely, on what just grows out in the woods. Because, like they've heard it said that, well, humans have done that in the past, why can't we do that now? First off, I don't consider myself necessarily an expert in wild foraging, but it is something that I enjoy to do. Nuts, berries, mushrooms, greens, flowers, of course, hunting, fishing, anything that's wild food. I enjoy doing that, and I try to, every year learn a few more things, a few more plants, a few more mushrooms, things like that, to increase my knowledge base. And I understand that some places on this planet are a little bit more fertile than others when it comes to, the production of natural foods that grow in the wild. But I also don't believe that most people can truly survive for any length of time other than maybe just, days off of what's out there in the wild. And so, and of course, this is just my opinion. And I know everyone, different people have different levels of expertise when it comes to this. And it's not really that. It's just that, will the land produce enough food for you to live? And then you also have to figure in, will the land in SHTF scenario produce enough food for us to live? I tend to think not. We know scientifically that, in the past millennia, that our environment has changed because of the increase of human activity, the increased amount of humans and agriculture and chemicals and stuff, that there are, less wild animals, there's less fish, there's less birds, there's less plants, less trees, all this sort of thing. So there's just less food out there. And the types of plants that grow, it's kind of different. And so you figure that in, and then you figure, if something really bad does happen, you're going to have a bunch of people, for instance, where I live, most of your local people, they are it's, very hunter friendly around here. Everyone hunts, most everyone. So they're going to be out in the woods. They're going to be hunting up all the deer and the squirrels and the rabbits and turkey and everything else. People are going to be going out and foraging and, all the things that they can think of to forage, because they're going to start getting hungry really fast. And so you're going to see food being depleted greatly out in the wild. And then there's also a factor that it's kind of hard to figure in. You've got to almost assume that in any kind of big SHTF it's somehow going to affect the environment. Whether it's some type of chemical, biological, virus, nuclear, or just, a lot of people and animals dying because of whatever happens. The grid goes down and people start dying, and the animals that are dying that people aren't taking care of. And then all that death creates, increase in, insects and things like that could adversely affect the environment. There's all kinds of factors to figure in. If a bunch of people died within a short amount of time, it's going to throw off the balance of, energy being produced and emissions, and, just there's a lot of things there that, I can't necessarily guarantee are facts, but when you start to think about it, if human population, because of some major event, took a nosedive real quick, I think it would definitely affect the environment. So the point that I'm trying to get at, because I'm continually walking around the barn to get to the door, while I am a huge proponent of learning to forage and learning to be familiar with edibles that are in the wild and medicinals, I don't think it's possible to completely sustain yourself. Maybe one person or a couple of people, if you have enough area around you, for instance here. But then, of course, you have things like fall and winter where most of your edibles are gone. So unless you figured out a way to harvest enough and store them up, then that's a problem. So here's my idea, and this is what I was talking to the people yesterday. Most preppers, when they do food storage, the two main things that everyone talks about is beans and rice, beans and rice. And of course, there's a lot of other things, canned foods and wheat and freeze-dried foods, and there's many other things to store up food supplies. But beans and rice are really cheap, and they can store for a very long time if properly stored. And they'll fill your belly, and usually give you enough calorie content to kind of keep you going. But one thing that beans and rice is lacking is a good, well-balanced, especially rice, well-balanced of a lot of the minerals, vitamins, nutrients, things that you need. You get a little bit out of beans, but, over time, as they age, even if they're stored properly, that even diminishes the nutritional value. So what I say is learn what's good and edible out here and use that to supplement with the foods, so that you're getting more nutrition, because the wild foods are very dense when it comes to nutrition, minerals, vitamins, and things, even more so than cultivated garden foods. If you had a wild, say like a dandelion, wild dandelion greens versus lettuce, the wild dandelion, it has, an immense amount of more nutrition than the lettuce. So use the wild stuff in your foods, supplement it in your foods to increase the nutritional level and value of what you're eating. There are also things that you can get a lot of calories out of. For instance, around here, something that in the Ozarks, especially in my area, but in pretty much all the Ozarks, that grows just insane, and it's actually kind of a pain for a lot of property owners, are wild blackberries. And if you kind of develop them, trim them back, things like that, you can get them to where they produce quite a bit. And I've got so many wild blackberry plants on this property. It's insane how many wild blackberries. And if you work at it, eventually you can start getting quite a bit. I know people that have approximately the same kind of land that I do, and they're getting, 50, 60 gallons a year out of their blackberries. Well, you take that, if you can that, put it into, say like a jelly or jam or whatever, preserves, there's a lot of calories right there that's growing wild on your property There are also very, a lot of antioxidants in blackberries and other things. But the main thing, you've got a lot of calories right there. And so that's, a calorie source that can get you through, say, the winter. So, throughout the summer, you're harvesting blackberries, you're canning them. Of course, yes, you have to have the means to can them. You need some kind of sugar. Honey, you can do honey or other things like that. And then you've got calories to help you through the winter time, because when you're looking at it from food storage, of food survival, you really need to look at it in a calorie perspective. How many calories do you need on a day-to-day basis? And what's usually estimated for an average adult in SHTF, meaning that you're going to be more active. You're not going to be sitting in a cubicle at work, playing on a computer. You're going to have an active lifestyle that you probably need somewhere between 3,000 and 4,000 calories a day. And so you're trying to eat foods to keep that calorie level up. Probably not going to have 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day, but that's ideal. So when it comes to wild foods, I think that it's extremely necessary. I know in the beginning of this video, I almost probably sounded like I was against it. I think wild food, whether it's plants, animals, fish, birds, nuts, berries, I think it's extremely valuable and really necessary for a prepper, because you can only store so much food, and no matter how well it's stored or what it is that you're storing, as it ages, it does lose nutritional value. And I don't care if it's sealed, canned, freeze-dried, whatever. It does lose some nutritional value over time. I think that, the two things that as preparedness people we should be doing is producing our own food through gardens, raising meat, that sort of thing, and then becoming very good at knowing the stuff that grows around you that's edible. Of course, medicinal too, but that's kind of a separate subject for right now. During this time of the year in my area, there is an abundance. You can look behind me. This is all green, and excuse that annoying dog. It's the geese. I've said this before. See, they don't fight or anything, but the geese annoy him, go up and kind of peck him in the hind end and stuff. And instead of him just doing something to scare him off, he just sits there and barks at him, and it doesn't scare him off. They just still peck at him. But anyways, what I'm getting at, if you look out here, you see all this green stuff out here? There is a lot of things out there that's edible. And you might say, well, I don't live out in the sticks like you do. Well, I guarantee you that you can go right around in your yard and find good things. There are lots of places, of course, once you get more into the city and civilization, you do have to be careful of, are they spraying chemicals on the food, on the plants? But there are a lot of great edible foods that grow all around us. That needs to be something that you're learning to do, because it can sustain you for a while. But the bigger thing is if you take this stuff out here, and you put it with growing a garden and raising some animals and your food storage that you have now and food storage along the way, meaning as you're growing food, you're storing more food and more food. You put it all together and you can have a lot of food. You can have a lot of nutritional value out of it. This stuff that grows out here, I've said it, it's to say it all the time, just start looking this stuff up. Look up iceberg lettuce or romaine lettuce, the nutritional value of it, and then look up like wild dandelion or stinging nettle. That can be used as a salad, a green to cook, or plantain or things like that you can use as a salad green, violets. Look at the nutritional level of those things versus what you'd grow in your garden, and it's completely amazing, the difference. So I want to encourage everyone that even though the likelihood of you really truly going out there in these woods and just completely surviving for, till the Lord comes back or whatever, on what's growing out there is probably not very likely. It is very likely that you can use what's out there to supplement your diet. You should start doing it now so that you become used to it. And that way, you know, when the time comes that you have to, you've already got that knowledge. You're not trying to learn, you know, what is this plant? Is this going to kill me, or is this good to eat? You'll already know. And so even though on one side it sounds like I'm being a little negative about wild foraging, it's not. I don't want you guys to get this idea that, well, I don't need to have food storage, I don't need to grow gardens, you know, I've got 10 acres out in the country, I'll just live off of what grows naturally. Yeah, I don't know that you'll be very successful in that. And like I said before, you also got to figure in that, you know, there's going to be a lot of people going out in the woods too shortly after the balloon goes up, trying to find food and that sort of thing. So I think you're going to see a sharp decline in wild edible food, especially animals and fish. But there's still a lot of good stuff out there. There's all kinds of nuts, you know, there's tons of acorns out here, and walnuts and hickory nuts on this property. Other types of berries, wild plum trees, you know, apple trees, things like that that's growing on this property. And if you take that, become really good at identifying, harvesting it, preserving it, processing it, you can really supplement a lot of your diet and nutritional level with what grows in the wild. And it also increase your health, because if you're just going to sit around eating beans and rice for the next 5 years, your health is not going to go very well. You know, like I said, you may fill your belly, but you're going to become, you know, deficient in a lot of things if you don't add to that. So anyways, learn your wild foods. Go pick up a book, an ID book, a trail guide. There's all kinds of stuff on wild edibles. Pick up a good book and go out there and learn what's growing in your area, in your yard, on your property, that's edible. Because you'd be surprised, there's a lot of good food that's growing out there. Some of it's not the best flavor, but some of it's really good flavored. And start incorporating that in your diet now so that you will be ready when and if something bad happens and you need to depend more on what's growing out here in the wild. All right. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.